Hello. This is the second video related to our Artist Fellowship Grant. The first video talked about eligibility, so if you could please watch that video first to see if you're eligible. This grant is basically available for adult artists in our 7-county Northwest Minnesota area. So in general, the grant covers artists of all disciplines that live up in Kittson County, over to Roseau County, and down through Norman County in our area. More information is available on our website about eligibility at www.northwestminnesotaartscouncil.org. In this video I'm going to talk a little more about actually applying. What you want to do is print off first the guidelines section of our information that's on our website in the grants section, and in the guidelines you'll find information about what you need to include in your application, as well as how to put together your work sample, which takes quite a bit of time. Your work sample should relate to your application narrative, so whatever you're applying for, you should make sure that your work sample complements what you're applying for, so that the review committee is able to, for instance, see your current photography and therefore make a decision on whether your project to work with a professional photographer will advance your abilities, or if it will not quite fit where you're at within your career development. Then you should print out the Word file that is available of the application to see a little bit more about what is required for the narrative sections. The narrative you'll put together has to do with your project description, and that will include what you're planning to do with the money. So your project description complements your budget page, and you'll also put together a narrative related to your goals, evaluation, and community sharing. The community sharing is a very important integral to the review panel of how you're going to share what you did within your activity back with the public in your area. So what I'm going to do is just kind of go through a couple of things related to the application itself. The first thing that you'll do with the application is to fill out your contact information. So the contact information includes your name and address in the upper left corner, and in the right side you'll put your current contact phone number, and then also an other number, so that we have 2 phone numbers for you, and your email that you'd like to receive correspondence related to back and forth dialogue that we'll have with you about your application, as well as if you're awarded the grant. You'll also fill out your website address if you have a website already. In general, the 2 narrative sections are the project description, like I spoke about. In that section you will need to talk related to if you're going to work with an individual, if they're qualified. So some attachments you might have to your project narrative could include price quotes of items over $200 to make sure it's feasible to purchase those items for that amount. And you might also have some qualifications that you need to list for artists that you're going to work with or take lessons from. So you might have an artist resume for that person. You might have to show that the workshop you want to attend really exists, so you might have to print off something from the internet or make a copy of a brochure and include that with your application. So your project narrative should be supported with some materials that show the feasibility of what you're planning to do. Your goals, evaluation, and community sharing is a narrative that relates to a few items that are explained in the information that's put forward at the beginning of the application. So that spot says, describe your career goals as an artist, then relate them to the goals of this proposed project. And you'll also include how you will decide at the end of the project, which is your evaluation, whether these goals were achieved. Then you describe how and when you will show the results of your project to your hometown or your local community. Now that could be putting on a little performance, it could be attending the Art in the Park that's in your area, it could be displaying your visual artwork at a bank or a library setting, or it could be having a lecture series on your writing, or assigning time for the book that you've created. So it can be a variety of things related to your artist discipline. The other part of this first information page is it shows you what you need to include, and I'm going to go over those sections. So you need to have your work sample and work sample description, which I'll mention in a minute, your artistic resume or a clear list of your recent accomplishments in your arts medium, your completed application form, which we went over. We'll go over a little bit more. And you also need to have your narrative answers to questions 2 and 3 that are listed here on the information page. So you'll have to complete another piece of paper and send that with your application. And then you need to have 1 letter of recommendation and 2 price quotes for equipment that is valued over $200 and a documentation of your proposed opportunity. So those are listed in bullet points right at the beginning of this information page. Back to the application itself. In the application, you're going to check off that you included those 2 narrative sections. Then you're going to list how many adults do you anticipate will benefit from your community activity. So that'll be your guess at how many people will actually either attend the performance you put on, visit the library when your art is on display, that kind of thing. And then we need to know the children and students that will be exposed. These are requirements of the state. So if you know that families will come to the library, how many kids will most likely view what you've put on display? Your budget should total $1,500 or greater for this application page here. So you're going to list a summary of some normal things that you would have as part of your budget. So it might be training costs with a value, supplies and materials with a value, artist fees for working with professionals and a value. And then you'll total that up and say if it's over $1,500, where the match will come from. Where will that money that helps make your project feasible come from? It could be your cash, it could be tickets charged, it could be another grant that you've received. So you'll put that in this line here. Now what you want to do is complete the narrative and the budget related to the first level, the $1,500 level. Then this is a tiered system. So whatever level we're announcing right now, which currently in 2012, 2013 is our $1,500 level, that will be the first tier. So then you fill out the application for that and you go to the review panel. If you want to be considered for the second tier, then you complete another page, an extra page, and you submit it with your application, narrative, and budget that supports. Right now, our level the McKnight Foundation is funding us for is to give out $5,000 awards to artists. So if you would like to be considered for the $5,000 award, you complete that extra page and you submit it with your application. A lot of times the panel is looking for projects that the artist would grow to a higher level if supported at that higher level. So for instance, you might be able to do so many studio updates related to things that you need to purchase to have a better running studio for $1,500. But if you're given the $5,000 grant, you would be able to put in a ventilation system, you would be able to order a new kiln, just a whole variety of things that help advance the artist's career. Now this is a fellowship, so you can include a little bit of money related to paying yourself. Doesn't sound like much, but we do allow $200 to pay yourself within the fellowship. When you complete this page, you go on to the checklist. So what we're looking for you to check is that you've completed the application, you've put those narrative sections in here, you've done the work sample description, your artist resume. You're going to check all those things off. It talks about some things that are ineligible too, like endowment funds, tuition. You can't pay yourself greater than that $200. For activities primarily for the religious socialization of the participants, so we try to not have that included, although that isn't necessarily an eligible item since we are funded by the McKnight Foundation. For payment of debts incurred before the grant activities began. Our deadline right now is October 15th each year, so if you have debt that happened related to your project prior to the review committee reviewing your application and making an award to you, you will need to cover that debt yourself. It can't be covered by the grant application. So then, in general, when we have our October 15th deadline, projects begin January 1st and last till December 31st of the upcoming year. So we need to have them completed within the year. There is some flexibility to stretch further than the calendar year, but in general we try and have the projects completed by that time. Now I'll spend just a minute talking about work sample. Work samples come in usually on a DVD format nowadays. Almost all artists besides writers tend to do that. So what they'll do is they'll shoot a video of themselves and they will send that DVD to our office. It'll either be of them performing, acting, playing their music, doing their dance. It also could be setting out their artistic pieces and talking about them on video to describe when they created them, their inspiration for them. So what we're looking for is 2 contrasting works for all of our performing artists, and we're looking for our visual artists up to 10 samples, and we don't want to have any less than 5 if you could. So make sure that you send at least 5, but up to 10 pertinent samples of visual art photography work. For writers, we're looking for 15 pages, so 15 pages of work. Often writers will submit 2 different styles, or they'll submit a short story that's completed, or 15 poems, something that reflects their current work and what complements their proposal. I think that's all the work samples to discuss. You do have to put together a work sample description, so you need to take the work samples that you've created on a piece of paper, describe them. So a lot of times they have a title, when they were created, for visual artists, the size, the medium, so is it a watercolor, is it an oil painting, is it a drawing, what style of drawing. For theater artists and for dancers and for musicians, a lot of times they will quote where the piece came from, so to do that documentation. They'll do that on the work sample description. The letter of recommendation should come from someone, that's another attachment, and it should come from someone who can talk about the feasibility of you completing the project within the project year. So really someone that's worked with you, that you've been able to successfully complete a project with, or that's part of your job, that can talk about how committed you are to completing the project. So that's it. You need to put together your, I didn't talk about your artist, your resume. So an artistic resume lists your qualifications, your training, and things that you have done within your arts discipline or other arts disciplines. So you want to focus on what you have done within the discipline that you're applying, but it's okay to broaden it with other experiences that you've had. You can briefly mention what you've done within another career path if it complements, especially if it complements your proposal. If it doesn't, we're really looking for that artistic resume and how you're going to succeed within this grant period. And I think that's all the attachments. I'm going to go through the sample list and make sure. So we talked about the application form, the narrative questions, the work sample and the work sample description, the artistic resume, and the 1 letter of recommendation. Just remember that you need to be a resident of our region, Northwest Minnesota, to be able to apply. You need to have lived here as a permanent resident for a year. You need to be over 18 years old, and you can't apply for tuition costs. So I hope that you consider applying for a fellowship and that this application information session online was helpful. And remember, you can always call myself, Mara Whitman, at Northwest Minnesota Arts Council. The number is 218-745-9111, and look for information on our website, www.northwestminnesotaartscouncil.org. And you can also sign up for our e-newsletter on our website, which is a great way of staying in touch with us and all our other programs and finding out announcements for upcoming grant deadlines. Thank you. Have a great day.